The morning I received the divorce papers felt surreal. It was as if I'd woken up in a life I no longer recognized. The quiet was unsettling without his usual presence beside me. I felt an ache, missing his laughter, his scent, and his warmth. 14 years of marriage had vanished in an instant. I kept asking myself, how did I let this happen? My mistake had cost me everything that truly mattered. My husband and I, both 36, had been together for 16 years and married for 14 of those. We'd built a life, created memories, and shared dreams. We had 2 beautiful daughters, ages 13 and 12, and for most of our life together, I'd felt like the luckiest woman in the world. But one thoughtless decision, one lapse in judgment, unraveled everything. 3 months ago, I did something I thought I'd never do. I cheated on him. It was only once, but the impact of that single act was devastating. I didn't fully understand why I had done it. On the surface, I blamed it on the stress of work, on feeling underappreciated or unnoticed, but I knew that was a shallow excuse. It wasn't the real reason, and I was struggling to come to terms with what had driven me to betray someone who had given me so much of himself. I'd started individual therapy, hoping to peel back the layers and understand what was going on inside me. Thinking back, my husband had been my closest friend, my confidant, and my soulmate since our college days. We were inseparable. We traveled together, shared our dreams, and built a life grounded in love and laughter. The births of our daughters had only deepened our connection, and for years we faced every challenge hand in hand, supporting each other in ways that felt unbreakable. But over the years, with the pressures of work and the demands of parenthood, our conversations became rare, and intimacy started to feel like a distant memory. It was during this time that a coworker showed interest in me. At first, it felt harmless, just a bit of friendly attention that eased the loneliness I'd been carrying. But one thing led to another, and that innocent flirting spiraled into a night I wish I could erase. By the next morning, the guilt hit me like a wave, and I knew I couldn't keep it hidden. I confessed to my husband that very day, admitting everything in a fit of shame. I couldn't bear the weight of my actions, but in truth, nothing could have prepared me for his reaction. When I told him what I'd done, the look on his face was something I'll never forget. He was silent at first, just staring, as if I'd become a stranger right in front of him. Then, his expression twisted, and he finally broke, calling me things I'd never imagined hearing from him. Words that stung but were fully deserved. I knew then that my one moment of weakness had destroyed everything we had built together. I tried explaining myself, though I knew words couldn't undo the damage. I told him how it had started with innocent conversations, casual flirting that I hadn't taken seriously until it was too late. I could hardly get the words out, my voice trembling as I recounted that night with my coworker. I'd wished, deep down, that I could be anywhere else, that I could just disappear, or be hit by a car if it meant erasing the pain I'd caused him. But there was no escaping what I'd done, and all I could do was try to make things right. Desperate to prove I was done with that chapter, I blocked my coworker's number, deleted every trace of contact, and handed my phone over to my husband. I wanted him to see that I was willing to do anything to regain his trust. I even told him that if he wanted to end things, I would understand completely. I told him I regretted it deeply, that I was willing to go to any lengths to show my remorse and fix what I'd broken. But trust, once shattered, isn't easily repaired. My husband was never the type to forgive easily, even with friends. In his world, loyalty meant everything, and betrayal was something he couldn't look past. He told me he wanted a divorce. Just hearing the words felt like a punch in the gut, but I couldn't argue with him. I deserved it. I'd broken the trust we'd spent years building, and now the man who once looked at me with love could hardly stand the sight of me. Then, something unexpected happened, the quarantine hit. Suddenly, we were forced to stay under the same roof for what felt like an eternity. Those first few weeks were agonizing. He barely spoke to me unless it was about our daughters. I spent my nights on the couch, giving him as much space as I could in a small house where we were now confined together. I reminded him, every so often, that I was ready to do whatever it took if he ever wanted to work things out. But he kept his distance, saying things that cut me deeply and made it clear he wasn't anywhere close to forgiving me. Still, part of me clung to hope. After that first month of icy silence, things began to shift, slowly, almost imperceptibly. He started speaking to me again, mostly about the practical things, like groceries or the girls' schedules. I held on to each of those small exchanges as if they were lifelines, tiny cracks in the wall he had built between us. I didn't push, I didn't pry, I was too afraid that if I did, he'd withdraw even further, and the fragile connection we'd regained would snap. As the days went on, there were moments when he seemed less guarded, and even allowed himself to relax around me, if only a little. We spent some time together as a family, sitting down for meals or watching movies with the girls, small gestures that felt monumental after the coldness of the previous weeks. There were even times when he laughed at something one of the girls did, and I caught a glimpse of the man I thought I'd lost for good. Then, one evening, he invited me to sit and watch a movie with him after the girls had gone to bed. I almost couldn't believe it. I was careful not to show too much excitement, knowing that even a flicker of hope might scare him off. But inside, I was desperate for this sliver of normalcy, this chance to share something, anything, with him again. We sat side by side in silence, the distance between us still heavy, but the fact that he allowed me close felt like a miracle. It was like we were starting to remember a version of us from before the betrayal. Gradually, over those weeks, he opened up a bit more. We'd sit together in the evenings, sometimes even laughing at shared memories or talking about things unrelated to the hurt between us. Slowly, I felt a part of our friendship reawakening, and it gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, we could mend things. And then, one night, he surprised me by inviting me back to our bed, not as his wife, exactly, but as something closer than the stranger I'd become. I took it as a sign that he might be willing to move forward, to rebuild what I'd shattered. I encouraged him to talk to me about anything on his mind, anything at all. I wanted him to know I was here, willing to listen and to carry the weight of his pain if he needed me to. Those nights gave me a sliver of hope I hadn't felt in months. Maybe we were finding our way back, one fragile step at a time. But deep down, I feared it was only temporary. I knew the scars I'd left ran deep, and even as we spent those nights together, I couldn't shake the feeling that any moment, it could all slip away. One night, after a few drinks, we sat together in our bedroom, talking and laughing like we hadn't done in what felt like years. We reminisced about our younger days, joked about the silly things we used to do, and for a brief moment, I felt like we were reconnecting on a level that had been lost for so long. There was a warmth between us that I thought I'd destroyed forever, and it filled me with an almost overwhelming sense of hope. I couldn't believe I was getting another chance, even if it was just a glimpse of what we used to be. As the night wore on, I got a little bolder. I don't know if it was the drinks or the sudden flood of memories, but before I knew it, I moved closer, straddling him as we laughed together. We locked eyes, and for the first time since my betrayal, I saw a spark in him, something raw and real that made me think we could find our way back to each other. Instinctively, I leaned in, and we began to kiss, our connection feeling almost like it did when we were young and so deeply in love. But then, just as suddenly, everything changed. He pulled back, tears filling his eyes, and asked me to stop. I felt my heart drop as the reality of what I'd done came crashing back down on us both. Seeing him cry like that, seeing the pain that still lingered beneath the surface, was like a knife twisting in my chest. In that instant, I knew that my mistake was still there, still haunting us, and that it wouldn't be easily washed away by a few moments of closeness. I stumbled over an apology, feeling every bit of the regret and shame I had tried to bury, and eventually, we went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay there, wide awake, wrestling with the terrible feeling that I'd just pushed him even further away. I had dared to hope, and now I felt that hope slipping away, leaving me in a hollow, desperate silence. Just 2 days after that night, he came to me with a look I couldn't quite place. There was a calmness about him, but his eyes held a sadness that cut straight through me. He told me he had decided to move forward with the divorce. He couldn't make it work, he said, not even after our attempts to reconnect and rebuild what was left of us. The words felt like the end of everything, like he'd taken our marriage and laid it to rest, and I was left there to mourn it alone. I wanted to fight for us, to beg him to reconsider, but in my heart, I knew he was done. I had shattered something that simply couldn't be mended. So I nodded, trying to accept the reality of it, even though it tore me apart. We'd already agreed on fair terms for the divorce, knowing that whatever happened, we needed to put our daughters first. He was a fair man, always had been, and even in our separation, he was determined to keep things respectful, if only for them. He was scheduled to take a 2-week trip for work, and we decided that once he returned, we'd begin our new lives as co-parents, sharing custody of our girls. I helped him pack, a strange and heartbreaking routine for a wife saying goodbye to her husband for the last time. When he was ready to leave, we hugged. It wasn't the kind of hug we used to share, filled with warmth and love. This one was quiet, loaded with a sorrow that words couldn't capture. Tears streamed down my face as he left, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe, realizing that this truly was the end. When he returned from his trip, the sight of him brought a mix of joy and unbearable sadness. He smiled, we exchanged a few polite words, and then he went to spend time with our daughters. It was clear that whatever bond we'd had was gone, replaced by a hollow formality that seemed to carry the weight of all the years we'd lost. And today, the final blow arrived, the divorce papers, sitting on the table like a heavy, undeniable truth. I don't think I was prepared for how much it would hurt to see that document, that single piece of paper symbolizing the end of everything we'd once shared. Signing it felt like signing away a part of my soul, a part of my life that I could never get back. I miss him, more than I can put into words. I miss his laugh, his smile, the way he could light up a room just by being in it. And most of all, I miss the love we had, the one I threw away so foolishly. Now, all I can do is live with the weight of my regret. I wish he could somehow see the depth of my sorrow, how truly sorry I am. But I know that even my deepest apologies can't undo what I did. I'll carry this pain with me, and I'll always wonder what could have been if only I had chosen differently. And so, here I am, pouring out my story to strangers, hoping that maybe, somehow, it can serve as a warning to anyone else standing at the edge of a similar mistake. Because once trust is broken, once a love is lost, it may be gone forever.